Hi again and welcome to the Laughter Crafter channel. It's really good to be with you again. Well, this week we have part 2 of a project. You may remember that part 1, which we had last week, was a little picture that I did using some watercolor paints and also some strips of torn paper down the bottom, layered, and then we put some stitching through that paper. And I was quite happy with that simple little picture. I hope you had a go at doing one. Well, this is part 2, and part 2 is the frame to go around that picture, and here is the finished result. What do you think? I'm really happy with this result. It looks a bit like leather, doesn't it? But it's not. It's just MDF wood that I cut a hole in down at the shed. And then I took a stencil and some modeling paste and applied the modeling paste on top of the stencil, moved it around. When the modeling paste was dry, then I applied 2 different tones of orangey brown paint. When that was dry, then I took my stippling brush and dotted on some black paint and rubbed that in. And then came back with some a soft cloth and some isopropyl alcohol and took the excess of that black paint off and sort of left a patina here, which makes it look very aged, makes it look like an old antique that's been sitting up in grandma's attic for 100 years. In fact, I just did it over the last 2 days and I'm really happy with it. Once that black paint was dry, then I put on a coat of varnish and framed it all up so it's ready to hang, although I have no idea where I'm going to hang it up because I have no more room in my house. I'll probably end up giving it away as a present or sticking it in a gallery for sale. Either way, I'm really happy with this, and it wasn't difficult. It didn't take ages. It didn't cost much at all, and it's easy enough for you to have a go at. And imagine if you just experimented with different colors. You could come up with all sorts of really fascinating ways to pretty up a frame and make it quite unique. So here is the limerick that goes with this project today. Mark a circle in wood with a pencil, cut it out with a saw-like utensil, or a saw. Then apply some thick paste and there won't be much waste when you slap it on using a stencil. There you go. All right, here is the joke that goes with this project today. So I made a huge mistake when I challenged death to a pillow fight. I wasn't prepared for the repercussions. Okay, let's get on with the craft. So here are the things I think I'm going to need for this three-dimensional stucco effect, if you like, onto this frame. I made this frame at the men's shed last week. It's just a piece of MDF around about 10 or maybe 12 mils deep, and I've just cut a circle in the middle of that. Then I'm going to take this frame, this stencil, and I'm going to apply some multi-purpose filler. You can also buy modeling paste, which are really specific for doing this sort of work, but they're quite expensive. This does the job, and it does it really well. Doesn't cost too much either. I'm going to apply that paste with this little silicone spatula kind of a thing. It's kind of bendy, and I think that will work really well to get the paste on there. Once I've applied this pattern wherever I want to on top of this surface, then I'm going to let that dry, and then I'll come back later with this lovely beautiful chromacryl paint. It's sort of a burnt orange colour, and that's water-based. I'm going to brush that on with my wide brush, let that dry. I will paint that over the whole surface, let that dry, and then I'm going to come back in with some black watercolour and a smaller brush and just kind of scrape across the surface and in some of the cavities and some of the little gaps, and then rub that off. So I'm going to have sort of an antique-y looking look to this frame. It'll be kind of patinaed up with this black on top of this reddy brown colour. So that's around about it. If I think of any other things along the way that I'm going to use, I'll show you what they are. But now I think we can get started with putting on this modeling paste onto the stencil. Here are some other things I think I'm probably going to use for this stenciled frame. When I'm rubbing off the excess black paint, just to leave sort of residue of it, I'm going to use a soft piece of 100% cotton, like this piece of calico, and some isopropyl alcohol, which I've used before. And then I'm going to finish the whole thing with a clear varnish. So there we go. I think that's everything. So you can wear gloves, or you can be prepared to kind of get this stuff all over your fingers. Look, I don't really mind. I'm not precious about it. It easily washes off with water. I just find that I'm probably going to make more of a mess if I get it on gloves and then sort of smear it around. So just going to get some of this paste and just smear it on in the gaps. And of course, when we lift up that stencil, by theory, the paste will just be in where the holes of the stencil are and not in the other parts. So there we go. And I'm not making it super duper smooth. I'm just sort of leaving a little bit lumpy and bumpy and rustic, and I'm fine with that. So I'll just do this little one and then I'll probably continue on by myself, but you get the idea. Probably you want it to the depth of about 2 millimeters. A little bit like icing a cake, except we're not being as perfect with the finish. There we go. That's pretty good. It's fairly smooth. If we find that it's really too lumpy and bumpy, we can come back with a wet and dry sandpaper at the very end and smooth it off before we do the painting. So that's that one. I'm going to lift this up and move the stencil. Okay, so we're not going to cover all the spaces. I'm just going to be kind of fairly random with it. But there you go. I'm ready to go on and do the next one now. So I'll film that as a separate little clip and speed it up super fast. So I'm just coming in to get rid of this excess moulding paste that sort of got dragged across with the edge of the stencil. Now I don't mind the fact that there's some discoloration on that background, because as long as that hasn't got any dimension to it and it's flat, that is just going to be painted over. It's more any bits that are sticking up that I just want to leave the only bits sticking up being the bits that I intended to have sticking up. So I've got these little cotton buds. There's some definite little dollops that have gone into the circle of that cutout. So let's get rid of those. So talk amongst yourselves. So I am going to put on the coat of paint now, but I'm actually going to mix up two colours and have it kind of a little bit patchy. I've got the one that I chose before, which was just called orange, but it's kind of a burnt orange, and this is a, well, it's called red ochre. So I'm going to have a go at painting these both on. So there's the coat of the two different oranges all over that frame. I've done the circle on the inside. I've also done the four sides. Sometimes people forget to paint the edges of their canvases or their frames, but that's really important. It's a very important part. It's quite noticeable if you don't do it. So another important thing that I've done, because this was a three-dimensional paste that I put onto this frame, I had to jiggle the brush right down into all the little nooks and crannies to make sure I didn't miss any. So that's what I've done, and I think it's all well covered, and I've got it all over this wooden workboard as well, so I'll give that a good scrub later. But for the time being, that's got a good coverage, and I'm going to let that dry now. So here is the frame. That coat of, two coats of different oranges dry now, and I don't know how well you can see all that textured paste in the stencil pattern there, but it looks quite nice. So what I'm going to use, I've decided to use my little stippling brush, which I picked up in a market in Sri Lanka, and I've got a little tube of black acrylic paint, so I'm going to just pop a little dot of it down there on that parchment paper. And I'm going to use a method called dry brushing. So basically, you just brush on a very scant bit of paint that's almost not there. You've almost completely gotten rid of it. It needs a little bit more, but you may be able to see that now, that what you're doing is you're just getting little bits of it which accentuate that pattern from the stencil. So dry brushing is really removing almost all the paint from the surface of the brush. You're not putting on any wet paint in the traditional sense where it sort of drags across. And you'll see that I'm just using this stippling brush to sort of rub in a circular motion. And I'm going to come back when it's completely dry and rub more off. So at the moment it's just looking very dirty and a little bit sort of like a patina. But that is going to be, a lot of the stuff on the flat surface part that hasn't got the moulding paste, that is going to rub straight off later on when I come back with a dry microfiber cloth. So there you go, I'm just going to keep on doing that. So I've got some isopropyl alcohol, which I have used before. So I'm just going to apply some onto this clean piece of calico. Whoopsie. And I'm just sort of going to rub it across the surface of this paint. And it's going to remove excess and leave lots of that black paint down in the grooves. You can see how it's sort of making a very antique-y sort of look. So I'm just going to keep on at this for a couple of minutes. Okay, there you go. What do you think? Easy enough? Sure is. Inexpensive enough? Sure is. If you can go and join your local shed, many places it's just called the shed these days, not the men's shed, because women are allowed, and I'm certainly allowed to go down to the shed. And it's a great place to make friends, a great place to explore my creativity and make fabulous little things like frames like this. Really easy. So have a go, or go buy a frame. But I think that this size and shape of the frame really is gives me the ability to show off this gorgeous stencil pattern. So there you go. All right, that's it for this week. In the meantime, before I see you again next week, I hope that you have lots of laughter in your life and get on with doing some craft as well. And I'll see you next week. Bye.